Saying the wrong words at the wrong time can lead to some pretty bad consequences. So in this video, we're going to talk about 10 things you should never say at 3 a.m., saying these could result in an early demise. So make sure to stick around for number 1. Starting off our list today at number 10, I told you so. Now, yes, you might think that saying I told you so at 3 a.m. is not a big deal, but you'd be wrong. Why? Well, because of the tone, right? When someone wakes up in the middle of the night and you happen to be awake, whatever it is that they're thinking at that moment, whether it be a nightmare or maybe some random thought, they're going to be very sensitive with their emotions. The last thing that they want to hear from you when they in this heightened state of emotion is I told you so. The reason why is because it's clear that they're uncomfortable and perhaps even scared. And if you say something like I told you so, you're only going to exacerbate the situation. Instead, why don't you try and comfort them rather than antagonize them? So no matter how tempting it is to say I told you so, next time they wake up in the middle of the night and say something weird, just keep your mouth shut. No. 9. Where are the toilets? You know what happens to be one of the most common occurrences that take place at 3 a.m.? People needing to use the bathroom? For whatever reason, whether it be that they drank too much the night before, or maybe they ate a meal that was too heavy, this is very common. So if your friend wakes up at 3 a.m. and starts asking you questions like, where are the toilets, or where can I go to use the bathroom? There's no need for you to play along. In fact, you should let them know that it's 3 a.m., and that they should probably just hold it until morning. Doing this will obviously save them from embarrassing themselves in front of everyone else in the room by making a mad dash to the toilet. But it's also going to save you from having to clean up any messes that they might make along the way. If you were to just play along with their delusion and tell them where the toilets are, they might end up peeing all over the floor or in the bed, which is something that you definitely don't want to have to deal with. At 8, you snore so loud. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and heard your partner snoring really loudly? Of course you have. It happens all the time. I'm sure that you've reacted negatively to it too. However, despite how annoying and even disturbing it may be to listen to your partner snoring, you should never say you snore so loud. At 3 a.m.? Why? Well, because you need to consider their sleeping habits and whether or not they would still be able to fall back asleep after you say something like that, if you really wanted to be honest with them. Then you should wait until they re-awake, and then tell them that you re-bothered by their snoring. This way you won't risk waking them up even more and ruining their sleep. There are actually studies that show that people who are awakened during their sleep tend to have difficulty falling back asleep, even if they were awakened for a good reason, so keep that in mind. At number 7, are you okay? Perhaps you live with a roommate or a friend, and at 3 a.m., you hear some strange noises coming from their side of the room. You might be asking yourself, should I check if everything is all right? Well, in most cases, the answer to that question is no. Oftentimes, people make the mistake of waking up their roommate or friend if they hear strange noises or if they see them moving around in their sleep, but in most cases, this is unnecessary and will only serve to annoy the person you're living with. Think about it. Would you want someone to wake you up in the middle of the night just to ask you, are you okay? Chances are you wouldn't. In fact, it would probably leave you feeling more annoyed and agitated than anything else. So next time you hear strange noises coming from your friend's room, just ignore it. If it's really an emergency, then you'll hear them screaming or shouting. But until then, just keep quiet now. 6. I haven't seen you in forever. Have you ever been at a party or a social event and met someone that you knew from years ago? If you have, then you know exactly how awkward those kinds of interactions can be. Sometimes you just don't know what to say and how to act. And this becomes even more difficult if it's 3 a.m. and you're both drunk. Let's say that you at a party with your friends, and all of a sudden you bump into an ex-classmate of yours that you haven't seen in years. They might get really excited and say something like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever. How have you been? Even though they might mean well, the best thing that you can do in this scenario is to politely excuse yourself and go back to your friends. Trust me, you do want to be stuck having a deep conversation with someone that you have unseen in years while you both drunk. No. 5. That reminds me of a story. We've all been there. Maybe you retelling a joke or a funny story to your friends when all of a sudden someone interrupts you and says, that reminds me of a story. Let me tell you, there is nothing more annoying than someone doing this. Not only does it completely derail the conversation, but it also makes you feel as though your story wasn't interesting enough. And trust me, you don't want to be the person that tells a story at 3 a.m. only for someone to interrupt you and say that reminds me of a story. There is a time and a place to tell stories, and 3 a.m. is never the right time to do so. If someone does this to you, just give them a quick shut up and then continue telling your story. If they persist, then just roll your eyes and ignore them. At no. 4. Can I ask you something? If you ever find yourself being asked a question by someone at 3 a.m., you should never respond with, sure. As cliche as it sounds, 3 a.m. is often the time when people become overly emotional and say things that they do and mean. So if someone asks you a question at this hour, it's best to just ignore it. They're probably not expecting you to answer anyway. By responding with sure, you're only encouraging them to continue talking and potentially making a fool out of themselves. If you're really close with this person, and you know that they're going through something difficult, then by all means help them out. But in most cases, it's best to just ignore their questions and hope that they go away. No. 3. It gets worse. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night feeling sick to your stomach. You stumble out of bed and head to the bathroom. And as you're sitting there trying to figure out what's wrong with you, someone says to you, "It gets worse." That person would be a liar. In fact, that person would be a psychopath. No one wants to hear that their current predicament is going to get worse. It's just not human nature. So if you ever find yourself in this situation, just stay silent. It's the best policy. No. 2. What are you doing? So you're fast asleep in your bed when all of a sudden you hear a knock. You open your door, and there's someone standing there that you didn't invite. What would you say in this situation? Chances are you're going to say, "What are you doing here?" But that's not a good idea. The person standing at your door is obviously comfortable enough to be there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have knocked. So by asking them, "What are you doing here?" you're only going to make them feel unwelcome and unappreciated. Instead, why don't you try being more polite and welcoming? After all, they did come to your house at 3 a.m., so they must be desperate for help. And finally, at no one. Go away.
Imagine waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a ghost standing over your bed. God, what would you do in that situation?
Most people would scream and try to kill the ghost. However, that's not always the best option. Ghosts are known to be quite sensitive, and by telling them to go away, you're only going to make them angry. If you happen to see a ghost at 3 a.m., the best thing to do is to remain calm and polite. Thank them for visiting, and ask them if there's anything that you can do to help. After all, they did come to you in the middle of the night, so they must need your help. By being polite to ghosts, you're not only going to make their day, you're also going to increase the chances of them helping you out in the future. If you made it this far, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more.